A few years ago, I had the incredible opportunity to travel to Russia. It wasn't a political trip or a business trip. It was simply a chance to see part of the world I had only ever experienced through history books, documentaries, and movies. I remember standing in Red Square, the Kremlin stretched along one side, St. Basil's Cathedral stood on the other with its colorful domes that almost don't look real. And I remember thinking, this can't be real life. As an American, there was also this strange feeling in the back of my mind. You're walking next to one of the most recognizable seats of power in the world. You've heard stories your entire life. You've watched enough movies to imagine every possible scenario. It felt surreal. But the moment I remember most on that trip didn't happen in Red Square. It happened inside of a small souvenir shop in St. Petersburg, Russia. My parents and I were talking when one of the employees overheard us speaking English. And he walked over politely and asked, "May I ask where you're from?" We're from the United States of America." And his face lit up. We don't get many Americans here." He asked about our trip and how we managed to get visas, what brought us to Russia, and what we thought of the country. He turned it into one of those conversations you never expect to have, but you never forget. Towards the end, I asked him a question. I said, Can I ask you something? What do Russians think about Americans?" He paused for a second. He looked around. And then quietly, he said something that has stayed with me ever since. "You are humans, just like us. You did not choose the country you were born into, and I did not choose the country I was born into. Just because someone leads your country doesn't mean you voted for them. And even if you did vote for them, it doesn't mean you agree with everything they do. Maybe I am the same way." I've thought about those words for a long time, because in one sentence, he dismantled something we all do. We confuse people with the institutions they belong to. We assume someone represents everything about their country, their company, their school, their religion, their political party, their sports team. But that's almost never true. Think about in your own life. Have you ever worked somewhere where you didn't agree with every decision leadership made? Have you ever rooted for a team that made a terrible trade? Have you ever loved your hometown while wishing parts of it were different? Of course you have. None of us agrees 100% with the decisions made by the groups we're technically a part of. So why do we assume everyone else does? The reality is that most people are simply trying to build a good life. They're raising children, they're going to work, they're taking care of aging parents, trying to pay bills, celebrating birthdays, making dinner, laughing with friends, worrying about tomorrow. Those things don't stop at a border. One of the greatest dangers in our world is when people become symbols instead of humans. It's easy to criticize a flag or a country or a government, but it's much harder to criticize someone you've shared coffee with. It's easy to make an assumption about millions of people. It's much harder when one of those millions has a name, a family, and a story. Travel has taught me something I never expected. The farther I've gone from home, the more people have looked familiar. Not because they spoke the same language, not because they shared the same culture, but because they laugh the same way. They love their families the same way. They've dreamed the same way, worry the same way. Humanity has a remarkable way of showing up once we stop looking at only our differences. Now, this doesn't mean we ignore injustice. It doesn't mean governments shouldn't be criticized. Ideas matter, policies matter, leadership matters. But we should be careful not to confuse governments with the people who live under them, because those are two very different things. That conversation in a small shop in St. Petersburg changed how I meet people. When I meet someone from another country, another company, another organization, or even someone who cheers for a rival team, I try to remember one simple truth. I don't know all of their story. And until I do, I shouldn't assume it. So today, I'd like to leave you with a small challenge. Think about a group of people you've been tempted to define by a label. Maybe it's a nationality, or it's a political party, a company, a profession. And ask yourself one question. What if I just met one person from that group over a cup of coffee? Not to debate, not to convince, but just to listen. Because sometimes all it takes is one conversation to remind us of something we should never forget. People are never just the flag they stand under. They're human beings first. And every human being deserves to be seen before they're judged.